Without further delay, I will now turn the floor over to this week's presenter, Randy Wachtel, for a presentation on art versus management. Take it away.
Got to put on my old man glasses. Thank you, John. Greetings. Thank you all for coming out. Can you tell that's an AI title and paragraph summary? It sounded really cool when I was on a deadline to give John my description. But the truth is I was originally planning on giving a talk about writing and staging an original production. Because for those of you who may be unaware, or perhaps you did not hear John say a while ago, tonight is opening night for an evening of shorts, which is exactly what it sounds like. An evening of short plays. A short play typically being a play under 10 minutes. So anyway, this was an idea that was created to support our new Performing Arts BFA degree, which we rolled out this year. So last year, during our season planning, I pitched this idea as a way to create more opportunities for our incoming BFA students. But we didn't have a super large incoming class this year. And so the interest in these shorts in the performing arts student body was not quite as robust as I had hoped. And so frankly, I got really nervous that I could cast the show. And by that I mean a student cast that was excited and engaged in helping me develop this material in real time. And as I was not able to find that cast, and it made me pivot on this talk and lean into a broader aspect. I am happy to report clearly that I did cast this show, and tonight is opening night of the production. And so yes, a year ago I planned to write this talk about staging the production and that journey to get to tonight. But because I don't know, I guess you could say I flinched, or perhaps the practical and grounded production manager in me thought a shift was the safest idea, as any good manager would do, I think. Anyway, that's how I landed on art versus management, or whatever that said. But before I move on to that, I want to talk about the short play production, because I did indeed cast this show. And no, it wasn't as I planned, but that sort of makes the perfect example of what a production manager often does, which is plan some more, and then shift to accommodate reality. So tonight we open the show, and I would like invite all of you to an evening of shorts, an hour of original theater that does indeed have some of our BFA and BA performing arts students participating both on stage and backstage, as well as students from the School of Art and Design, from psychology, from communications, 2 fellow faculty members, one from dance and one from English, and a former AU alumni, retired part-time faculty and New York City theater director. So yes, even though I was unsure if I was going to be able to pull this show off, I'm proud to say I did, thanks to the energy and time of all these other creative and amazing human beings. So thank you to all of them and the students involved, and I hope all of you will come out and see the show. It's tonight, tomorrow night at 7:30 in C.D. Smith, Black Box Theater. Who knows? You might actually enjoy it, or you might get offended. I mean, it's art, right? So that's a great way for me to segue into the fact that I never considered or referred to myself as an artist, nor was I ever aware of making conscious artistic decisions to guide my creative endeavors. Of course I was, but I interpreted it as managing my artistic efforts. That is, I tended to think about the art I was involved with as something to be managed within the larger realm of my life experience. I think I was just too ignorant to understand how my art efforts were being influenced by this approach. And I also did a lot of things the wrong way, at least according to those who know better and those who taught me. But regardless, I always paid attention and I tried to learn something from every experience. The bottom line for me is that I always just tried to be true to myself and my work, whether it was a creative effort or a practical, i.e. job effort. Why would I not put forth the same effort and energy into both? Indeed, how could I not? Art, work, whatever. If I was involved in it, I normally gave 110%. It's just kind of how I'm wired. Why did I never refer to myself as an artist? That's a great question. And the more time I reflected on this as I was crafting this talk, and the deeper I went into my idea of what an artist is and my own personal hang-ups with it, I spent a lot of time digging in my personal archives, and I realized I've been involved with at least 75 to 100 different theater productions in some way, and probably over 500 music gigs. And yet I was well over 40 before I ever called myself an artist. I don't really know why that is. I'm going to try to touch on some of that in the speech. Music was my main outlet for years, and I always tended to think of it as more as therapy than art. And theater for me was always about connections and community. And I think it's because for me, I tend to see life and the world and everything around me as art. I mean, if I examine my own personal success in this art form that I refer to as life, it's really for one simple reason. And this is probably mostly for the students out here today. I showed up. I embraced the opportunities and the moments. I understood very early in life that all of this is fleeting, and you damn well better take advantage of it today, right now. So yeah, I showed up and I followed up. If I said I would do something, I did. If I said I would be there, I was. And that simple thing has been the key to most of my success. Not only in art, because again, how do I separate art and life? I realize, as I just said, all of this sounds pretty simple, and that's because it is. As I look back, I also noticed how I simply took the initiative to do something if I felt it needed to be done. Or if I wanted to do it, I just figured out a way to make it happen. Who else was going to do that? Me. Because the more you do that, the more you learn. And the more you fail while doing that, the more you learn. Success is relative to your definition of it, which is another way of how I found myself in this role as production manager. Because here's the deal. Like most of the people in this room, and I imagine in the world, who call themselves artists, I never really felt like I had a choice. I had to express myself artistically in some way. In my experience, all artists are passionate and driven in people, often with a creative energy and ideas bigger than they understand sometimes or can even handle. And so I tried a lot of stuff. I made music, I wrote things, I tried to draw pictures, I got a camera and tried to take pictures, I acted, I directed, I designed, etc. All of this was just an effort to expel this artistic energy that was within me and hopefully see that blossom into something. And it did blossom, just not quite in the way that I expected. But by choosing to recognize this artistic need and to honor it, I was trying to find balance in my life. And I still try to find that balance every single day. But you do have to honor it and you have to understand it. Sometimes maybe even contain it, because it can consume you if you're not careful. And sometimes bad things can happen. How we find financial compensation in this world is irrelevant to the art we make. At least that was my approach when I was younger. And I'm not saying artists shouldn't be compensated. Far from it. I am saying that if you are fortunate enough to sell paintings for thousands of dollars or get a lucrative studio contract to make movies, then that's great. But in my experience, you're one of the very lucky ones. Society has blessed you with making something, dare I say, consumable? I'm just kidding. But maybe you know what I mean. I have many friends who work professionally in various forms of artistic expression, and I'm thrilled for all of them. But for me and many others, we make the art we do because we love it and because we have to. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, just for the joy of doing it. This is eventually how I found my way into production and educational work, because it brought me closer to art in my daily work life. There was compensation, of course, because I was managing things. Concerts, theaters, box office, etc. So I was close enough to all of that to at least feel connected. Why do you, make art? Who do you make it for? If you're doing a commissioned painting, then great. Yes, the customer is always right. But if you're making art, perhaps for your community, or for you, for your soul, it's a much more powerful and beautiful type of art. And most of us do it every day. We just don't qualify it as art. Another significant reason I struggled to call myself an artist was the sacrifices I felt were needed to wear that label. I never one single minute doubted my abilities or my passion, but I felt like if I was going to do something at the highest level, which in my head meant compensation, i.e. a job, then I had to be willing to sacrifice. I had to sacrifice my time, my energy, and understand how much of those resources would now be available or not available to those around me. Because I felt like I had to master whatever it was to get to that level, and frankly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to commit so much to any one thing. I sort of wanted to do it all. And that ended up being pretty helpful in the world of production management, where I can usually drop into most roles and pinch hit if needed, or at a minimum know who to call or what to do to address the situation. But hopefully if I'm doing the management part well, none of that happens. And so I'm just going to share some stories with you about me today, how I arrived here, hopefully maybe some of the lessons I learned along the way through experiences, and how they impacted my creative process and work approach. I'm just going to talk a lot, basically. So let's quickly look at the production manager definition. A production manager ensures that manufacturing or creative projects, like film, theater, are completed on time, within budget, and meet quality standards. They plan schedules, coordinate resources, manage his staff, act as a liaison between upper management and operational teams to optimize efficiency and safety. An artist is a person engaged in an activity related to creating art, practicing the arts, or demonstrating high-level skill in a creative field such as painting, sculpture, music, or performance. They interpret the world through imagination, often focusing on aesthetic expression or conceptual social commentary. Believe it or not, in my place in life, I see all kinds of connections between those definitions now. But I never really saw that when I was younger. In fact, when my professional life of managing something would spill over into my artistic efforts, I would dismiss it. I would explain to people that I did the art stuff because I had to. Literally, for my own sanity and grounding as a human being, I needed creative outlets for expression. And again, this is one of the main reasons I think I never referred to myself as an artist. If I was not making a living as an artist, how could I call myself an artist? Yes, I realize that's a really stupid sentiment. Of course, I am an artist. We are all artists. And as far as I'm concerned, we are surrounded by art everywhere. It's just how or if you choose to see it, or if you choose to see the world, for that matter. Because life is the medium for me, right? It's all art. As the production manager, I feel responsibility for everything. The talent and the technicians who support it, as well as the producer backing it and the audience paying for it. There is a great deal of psychology involved when you are managing anything, especially working with creative personalities. Production management, like any managing position, will vary a lot based on the actual position need and the institution's need. My first formal introduction to managing was via college as a stage manager. But if I really dig deep into my past, I can see the beginnings of this manager art thing overlapping really early. My first real memory of creating and performing something is in third grade, where I staged my own version of a Carol Burnett skit in a school talent show. I made my best friend be the customer who had a fly in his soup, and I wore a dress that my mother gave me to play the waitress. I wish I could remember it better, but I'm sure it probably wasn't very good. It was more about making and the energy of being on that stage, because even at that young age, I understood the reaction and what the energy felt like. And in a small K-12 school with less than 200 kids in rural Louisiana, you better believe I got a reaction. Third grade, I'm making and managing my own art. In fourth grade, I wrote, directed, and of course, starred in a play with my cousins at a family reunion. This is the playbill we made for it, which apparently also indicates that I'm sound effect and light designer as well. So clearly a pattern is emerging here, right? Yes, creativity and art, but also taking charge of things and managing them. There's one other interesting note I want to kind of point out here. So that's my name, and that's a little star. I started doing that in second grade because I knew I was going to be famous and signing a lot of autographs. So I wanted a star above my name because that's what I was, a star. And I kept that up until high school, and then I told myself it's kind of silly. And besides, I knew I would always be a star, and if no one else ever figured it out, oh well, that's their loss. I was being true to myself. And although it was silly, it was also a really subtle way for me to gain confidence as an adolescent and a young teenager. Every time I signed my name, I added that star, telling myself with my own signature that I was somebody, I was important, I was going to make my own reality. As I said, college introduced me to the proper role of a stage manager, and I firmly believe that if you can stage manage a play, you can manage damn near anything. Seriously. Being a manager means managing the thing, right? The team of people who work the machine to create the product. You just change the noun as appropriate. Being a good manager means doing it in a certain amount of time with consistent, if perhaps expected variable results within a budget. And being a great manager, stage manager, is all of that plus the ability to handle the human aspect of everyone and everything. Recognizing that everyone has a unique personality, a strength, a weakness, an asset in some way. And hopefully they're all emotionally connected to this machine or to this work. And of course, you better be able to pivot on the fly. When the light board crashes or the lead gets sick, you figure it out. Always understand your role in the production and never put yourself above anyone else. I think this is true regardless of what your role is, but it's especially true if you're the production manager. Occasionally, of course, you are required to play that manager card. But more often, you want to make sure everything is running the way it should. Remember, I mentioned how a good production manager should be able to pinch it almost anywhere. Never put yourself above anyone. The show is always the most important thing. And if something needs to be done to support that show, then do it. Grab the mop and mop the floor. If the toilet is backed up, get a plunger. Should someone else be doing it? Probably. But at the same time, the show must go on, as they say, and the production manager is there to make sure that happens. Sometimes things seem really silly and really trivial. It's the details, right? Tell you a little story about a detail. Night Ranger played my hall. This is, 10 years ago, whatever it was. It was a good gig, fun. At the same time, the tour manager made us do some really silly stuff, like creating little breakout rooms for each band member backstage. Whatever, you do what the artist wants. And Brad Gillis was the lead vocalist and the bass player in Night Ranger, and he had a serious issue with this center stage floor pocket. Our stage had these 3 downstage floor pockets with mic and data inputs. It was for our internal house system, which they were completely bypassing because they had this monster rented PA. Anyway, they had placed his mic stand, if you can see it right there, right over this 12-inch by 12-inch box. And this, or right in front of it, I should say. And this box was about a 1/2 inch to a 3/4 inch below deck level, so it wasn't surface. It wasn't level with the surface. So when they do their first sound check, he points it out and he explains that he can't afford to go tripping when he runs up to the mic. Okay, totally understandable, and I agree. Most artists on this stage were far enough back that this was never an issue. So I just simply suggest, why don't we move the mic stand about 10 inches upstage, which would put the floor pocket almost right under it. But no way. The road manager does not like that idea. Even though we had a 12-foot apron and a 40-foot stage behind that apron, they couldn't adjust the mic 10 inches. Okay. I say we'll see if we can figure out the floor gap so it's all more level. Now, my lead stagehand is right there for this entire conversation, and we talk about it, and I just say, go cut some cardboard, gaff it down, whatever. And I shift back to other stuff. 15 or 20 minutes later, the stagehand is hunting me down, and he's like, it's still a problem. So then I go have another conversation with the road manager and with Gillis, and we look at it again. I tell the stagehand to add a layer of masonite, something a little more firm, get up a little higher. This also means he has to run to the shop, which is in a separate building, and cut it to fit. We do all of this, and this time Gillis says, it feels about right height-wise, but I'm still not sure I trust it. Now, so at this point, we're less than 20 minutes from opening doors. I don't even know when I last checked with the front of house. The road manager makes it very clear to me that they will not go on if Gillis doesn't feel safe. Now, mind you, during the sound check, I'm watching him run up and down all these road-worn plywood ramps and boxes that they've been touring with since 1985. And I'm thinking a 30-year-old plywood box that's been repeatedly abused is safe, but this gaff tape is making you feel unsafe? I end up finding a thin black rubber dish mat in the kitchen, cut it to fit, taped it over this worrisome stage box, and it passed the test. Should I really have put that much energy into something that seemed so trivial? It's a good question. At some point during all of that, I realized the exercise really wasn't about Gillis feeling safe. It was about the road manager expecting me to get down there and do it myself, to give that issue the attention he felt it deserved that I was not doing. So yes, you deal with everything, no matter how simple or trivial, And yes, of course, you always want the artist to feel happy and safe going on stage. No, that's not it. Anyway, safety, it's not there yet. Safety, stress, and always being on. Being a production manager, or any manager for that point, often means dealing with highly tense and stressful situations. Things which are usually beyond your control but still require your attention. You always want to treat every show the same. Whether it's a lecture like this with one microphone and an audience of 10 people, or it's a sold-out show. You always have to be on. Mentally, you have to be dialed in. And quite frankly, that can be exhausting. Even when it's a simple gig, you're usually paying attention to several things constantly. The audience simply heightens that environment. My old hall was home to the Victoria Symphony Orchestra, VSO, who programmed about 8 shows a year in my hall, 5 of which were traditional large symphony concerts and 3 others that were either themed or some kind of fundraising effort. Sometimes the symphony was part of that, sometimes not. The very first show we did in there, we brought in the Cirque de la Symphonie, which was one of several touring Cirque flying shows. Now, I had never flown people before, and I was pretty anxious about that gig, to say the least, and very stressed. The morning of load-in for that show also happened to be the morning my son decided to join the world. Luckily, he arrived early, before 8:30 a.m. or so, which allowed me to get to the load-in without issues. And actually, it sort of helped settle me down, because it was a healthy delivery. He and my wife were doing just fine, and yeah, I had a new child in the world. That took my brain off of the idea of someone dying. And the gig went off without a hitch, but it was stressful, and it was super cool. And these ended up being some of my favorite shows. The second time we had them in was a bit more eventful. I'm pulling this up because we would fly people and we also would do human acrobatic type stuff. And I don't know, that's really cool and scary. So I'm going to show you a quick video of how we flew people. So we stand in the wings, stage manager gives us a call, we all back up, we pull the artist in the air, depending on what they're doing or if we have multiple, and then we walk it back down. It's very fun, it's very cool, it's stressful, because someone's flying in the air over musicians and almost over the audience. So you're always thinking, oh, please don't die. It's all right. There's good. So the night of the show, we had just flown the first artist, right? And the VSO stage manager calls me on the comm and he says he smells smoke. So I asked for some clarification, like, do you smell cigarette smoke or like something burning? And he says burning. So I immediately call my after-hours maintenance report, which was a standard protocol, and I say, hey, get over here as soon as possible. Meanwhile, I do a quick walk around backstage. I cannot smell anything. 5 minutes later, he gets on comm and he tells me he sees smoke coming out of the house left catwalk. So I wouldn't say I panicked, but I moved faster than I ever had in my life. We had a 55-step spiral staircase that took you to our mid-gallery, and then from there to the catwalks. They told me later that I did that climb in about 15 seconds. When I got up there, I smell smoke, and I see just a trace of it. I follow it down. It's in a mechanical room, and within a couple of minutes, I discovered we just had a belt burn up on a fan. Thank God, crisis averted. So I start my way back down, and I literally bump into the on-call maintenance guy who's walking around in the dark. He knows who I am. He asks me what's going on, and I just quickly assess him of the situation. I told him I flipped the breaker on the fan motor, and he can write up a Monday work order. But I realize as I'm standing there talking to him that he's clearly inebriated. I can smell beer just wafting off of him. And I'm thinking, what in the hell? Never mind you're on call, but to actually show up and climb 55 steps in the dark and then roam around drunk in front of top of an audience? I was livid. But when we got down, I didn't say a word because I'm focused on settling my crew down and finishing the show, which we do without issue. I then promptly called his supervisor and told him what happened and that I did not ever want to see him in my building again. Those are tense and stressful moments that happen in real time, and I would say are pretty specific to production management in the world of entertainment. But all management comes with difficult moments. Maybe not all with that sense of urgency, but sometimes it's hard to be the one in charge. For about 15 years, I worked for Herman Miller, or a Herman Miller dealer. During those 15 years, the company went from a private-owned company to a corporate-owned dealership and then back to a private company, and I was there through all of it. If you don't know, Herman Miller is famous for systems furniture and the aesthetic of design in the office place. The Eames chair there is pretty famous. Herman Miller is where I really truly blossomed as a manager, even though I still always had one foot in my art somewhere. I remember a company meeting pretty early where we all had to go around and introduce ourselves and what we did in the company. And so I introduced myself as a future rock star who was currently installing furniture. My boss didn't think much of that, but that's okay. They did at some point promote me to be the Motorola account manager, which meant I ran 3 different campuses spread out over a 40-mile radius in Austin, Texas, with about 60 buildings. And so suddenly I'm sitting in daily meetings and I'm being asked to plan out large projects and work with other trades and long timelines. My experiences there taught me a lot, and there were plenty of challenging and difficult moments. Like the afternoon my boss calls me to tell me that there would be a riff tomorrow morning and my crew of 20 would be a part of that. So I'm like, what the hell is a riff? Oh, you're laying my crew off tomorrow morning. Great. But she was adamant that she was the one to do it. And we got into an argument. And I insisted that that was my responsibility. It was my crew, I knew those guys, and they needed to hear this from me. And so I kind of want to point out that this is also a result of all my theater and stage management work. When you're a part of a theater production, you're a part of a family. You earn a new appreciation for the collaboration and the community spirit that it brings. I've always tried to maintain that same approach with fellow team members, colleagues, and certainly those who work under me. I engage them. I ask about their weekend, their interests. I'm developing trust, and sometimes too much trust. Like when one of my crew got a DWI, they called me. I think because they trusted me and knew I would show up. Or maybe they were worried what would happen if they didn't show up. But yeah, laying off 24 guys was difficult. It was also my birthday. Overseeing a theater or a theater production presents equally difficult moments, some clearly bigger than others. I'd gotten involved with the local theater, and that involvement just became more and more and more until suddenly I'm voted the artistic director. And I'm helping drive a complete overhaul of this theater that we owned. We basically refreshed a 1930s vaudeville-style proscenium theater. We put new seats, painted it inside and out, did some basic tech upgrades as the budget would allow. None of us got paid, even though we all had our names on a bank document, which is an interesting thing. We put every penny we made back into the organization, playing that long game here for the sake of the art and the organization. I helped introduce stipends to pay actors. I gave speeches to the town council. I made solicitations for city money. By the time I left, I had brought 3 other people onto the board of directors who all had theater degrees. I directed, acted, designed, ran lights, sound, skill saws, box office. I coordinated volunteer staffing and cultivated a connection with the city leadership. And I was super proud of all of that work. But remember, I'm not getting paid for any of it. I'm still doing the furniture gig. So back to the refresh. The theater was a combined effort of the original community theater in that town and another startup kind of wannabe regional theater. Both of them were suffering, and I proposed they just combine forces and put all that energy into one effort, since one org owned a building, and because the town was not really supporting them independently. So that's how that all started. I can't remember what was slated for our first opening production, but I was determined that it was going to be held to a better standard than what we had previously been offering. So when I go to watch the first tech rehearsal, it's clear to me that this show is not ready. At least, I didn't think they were. And they had made me the artistic director, which I took very seriously. And so I called all the board members and I said, we're not doing this. We're going to push it a week. It was a very difficult conversation and a very difficult decision, but it was the right decision. And I firmly believe that all the good productions we eventually staged are a result of that initial delay, of having an honest conversation about where the art was versus where we wanted it to be, what was going to be our standard, and what was going to be the first impression that people saw. Managing your expectations. This is a huge one, and I would suggest it applies not only to my management hat, but also my artistic hat. In my last gig, I ran a large performing arts hall for a school district. And my boss, the fine arts director, decided that in addition to my normal duties, I would now be the theater coordinator for the school district, which meant I was supposed to help oversee the overall theater mission of the school. 2 4A high schools and 4 middle schools, all with theater programs. Cool. After the first year of the situation and everyone kind of buying into what we did, we all went out for a happy hour to celebrate the end of the year. And I got this brilliant idea to pitch a show. I said, hey, would you guys want to do a show? I'll find an all-female cast, and I'll find a venue, and I'll direct it. We can rehearse over the summer when everyone is on break, and we can do daytime rehearsals. Of course, I had no idea if my boss would let me do daytime rehearsals, but I figured this was team building 101. And I was also keenly aware he was off contract for 6 weeks of the summer. So they said yes, and there was some real excitement with everyone, including me. I'm about to direct 6 women that have proper theater training who probably haven't had a good opportunity to act since college. Meaning, of course, they'd be hungry and excited. And they were, but I learned real quick, just because they had the training and the degree didn't mean they were actually good actors or had really done any acting outside of that college experience. Whatever. I was going to make the most of this, and I did. But I also had to kind of manage my and everyone else's expectations with that. And not just around the actors, around a lot of things. I found a small little theater about 30 minutes away in Port Lavaca, Texas, that was sitting empty. The city owned it. So they said, yeah, you can come in and you can use it for free. We're just happy to have someone in here. I think they had about 20 total lights, and half of them were par cans. The stage was maybe 15 foot wide. We learned during load-in that the bathroom for the actors was actually in a separate building next door. Super fun. So I had to scale down my original vision for this show. I had to manage my expectations of what the actors were doing, as well as what I was going to be able to design and put on this tiny stage with 20 lights. Now, it was not the strongest cast I ever worked with, but I found peace with all that because I managed my expectations. And within those, I have to say, they may have even exceeded them. And I also made a lifelong theater partner out of that show, which was an unexpected and wonderful thing. And a nice reminder about how powerful and connecting theater can be. I'd be remiss here if I don't spend a little time talking about my music ambitions. I was a high school band geek, and I loved it, and I was good enough that I probably could have pursued it in college, but I had zero interest in continuing formal music training. Plus, I'm just a drummer, man. We don't read music, we just feel it. I'm just kidding if Jesse hears that. 1989, Mistreater, my first real rock band. I loved it. But I also learned real quick, musicians are slackers at best, and losers more often than not. That doesn't mean they're not talented, but rather they're probably going to be late to practice, or the gig, or they're really only interested in carrying their own amp at the load-in. At 17 years of age, I was the one finding us gigs to play. Parties, small town festivals. I didn't understand it at the time, but I was managing us. That flyer is for a show we did in 1989. And yes, I designed that very cool 1989 Mistreater logo. I'm the one who got the hall. I got the other band. I reached out to the fire prevention program. I put the whole thing together. And I hope you are all appreciating the awesome flyers that I'm presenting here from the 80s. This is our first self-booked headlining gig, where I had to find an empty building that a landlord would rent out to 4 guys for one night with long hair. None of us over 20 years. But I found one, and he rented it to me. So I'm showing you all this because I was indeed making music, art, but I was also managing it all. Or maybe I should say I was managing the reality and the potential of it. After high school, I entered college completely clueless as to what I wanted to do, and even why I was there, honestly, because I already decided I planned on being a rock star. I was your classic academic explorer, just trusting myself, and the rest will figure it out, right? Making my own reality. And after my first year of doing just that, the university enlightened me to a new reality called academic probation. So following that year, I worked a 40-hour job every week for the rest of my time in school. And it taught me responsibility, not to mention providing rent and grocery money. But I was still trying to be a rock star through all of that academic journey. That's a picture from 1991. We won a battle of bands, which got us some studio time and an opening slot for a series of summer shows with a well-established band. Recording in a professional studio for the first time was cool, but the summer of gigs was even better because I was learning so much. These guys we played with were really good, and they had serious label interests. So I would show up early to all the gigs, and I would just hang out and learn things. How did the load-ins and backlines function? What was the hierarchy of that whole world? I was usually watching the sound guy or the light guy while my bandmates were doing all the fun band stuff. After college, I moved to Memphis. I formed a 3-piece metal band called Shovel Nose. We practiced 2 or 3 hours every single night. We played around town, decided Memphis was not big enough for us, or maybe the home of the blues was just not metal for us. We recorded a good demo, which was another cool weekend in a professional studio. And guess who found the studio and negotiated the fees? Me. The same person who was calling the club owners and getting gigs. I'm managing the band, trying to make our reality. So I suggested on a whim, hey, let's take this demo and let's move to Austin, Texas. There's a lot more clubs, there's a lot more opportunities. And we continue our quest to combat weakness. Yeah, the arrogance of youth. I miss it. For the next several years, I dedicated my life to this band. I mean, we all did, but being the responsible one often meant I was carrying more of the load. I had finally decided this was the art I could commit to and I could make the sacrifice needed to succeed. I told my girlfriend and now wife of 30-some years that, hey, the minute we got a record contract, we're out of here. Which was, of course, a joke because artists have no control over any of that, especially musicians. Still, we gave it one hell of a go and we pursued our young dreams of rock stardom. We lived in a house together for a few years where, surprise, surprise, we practiced every single night unless we had a gig. I continued serving as our manager, finding gigs, calling clubs, making flyers at the local Kinko's with lots of scissors and glue sticks. Really bad flyers like that, or that. We didn't own a computer. The internet was just this weird novelty thing we had barely heard about. I traded my personal pickup truck for a custom van and we used that to travel around to gigs. We also eventually recorded a full-length album, most of which I financed. You know, making someone's reality. Music was one of the purest experiences I ever had as an artist. There were times on the stage where everything simply disappeared for me, and it's the closest thing I can explain to an out-of-body experience. But outside of that 1 hour on stage, it could be really difficult, especially when you're the one doing the bulk of the work to get the gigs and to try to solicit the interest from the labels. Not to mention the lifestyle of a gigging musician is really hard and super unhealthy in a lot of ways. But I loved every single minute of it, and I learned a lot. So I'm going to wrap this up now that you all know more about me than you probably ever need or want to know. And I want to close just by saying that even though as a manager I tend to overthink and plan for every possible contingency, I certainly didn't plan to be a production manager. I never even heard that word in college. And even though in college I learned to stage manage, I didn't learn it via a class, because no class was offered for that back then. I learned it by doing it, and by trying to always tap into previous experiences I had for guidance, by listening to what was going on in the room and outside of the room. And again, I showed up, and I trusted and believed in myself. Thank you.
Questions or comments for Randy? I think it's awesome that you've kept some of those flyers after all of these decades, especially the script from when you were, what, you said in 2nd or 3rd grade?
Yeah, 3rd, 4th, something like
With your
that.
family play?
Yeah. Hey. Well, actually, I wouldn't call myself a hoarder, but I look at all that stuff as art, and it resonates with me. You know, it helps remind me of my artistic sensibility, my grounding me.
Got a whole bunch of baseball cards in my office. I look at that as you were saving it for when you were famous someday, and then that'd be worth $1 million of the first flyer that you made.
You can buy it, John. We can talk.
Look, I don't think I have $1 million in my pocket.
It's negotiable.
Oh, there's a question in the chat. Let's see here.
Somebody actually watched this on Zoom?
Yeah. If we have a student or child interested in theater, what is the best advice for getting them experience? Is it taking charge when they can?
Say that again, John, I'm sorry.
If we have a student or child interested in theater, what is the best advice for getting them experience? Is it taking charge when they can?
taking charge when they can is certainly a part of it. Just get involved. Find something to get involved with. If you can't, then make something. Find someone else who wants to do it. There's lots of opportunities. Sometimes you just have to take the initiative and ask. And sometimes you might be surprised when you ask someone, hey, you want to do a play? And they're like, sure. That's how I've done a lot of my theater. Yes. Oh, microphone. It's for Zoom. You have to use the mic, Chase, and don't make this a difficult.
Hello. Hello, Zoom. So my question is, after you finish this play that you're doing, what's your next creative venture?
That's a good question. Sleep, probably. I don't know. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Forgot. Too much going on. So I founded a group of theater troupe over 10 years ago now when we lived in Texas. And so every summer they do an independent production. And so we have been having monthly meetings trying to figure out what we're going to do because I'm going to try and go back and do the show with them in July. We'll see.
And where is that?
Victoria, Texas. It means, flying in and having 5 days to put it in front of an audience, which might be challenging, but they're working with local people right now. We're doing Zooms. We're working on scripts and concepts right now. So.
And where are you with your music these days? Or like what do you see in the future?
I don't, to be quite honest. My relationship with music is just so very different now. When you are immersed in it, when you give your life to it, it's very different when you step away from it. I still have drums. I have 3 sets of drums for that matter. I jam occasionally with people. And I have found that I'm in a place now where I don't worry too much about it. Let's jam. I can play any song. I may not play it right, but I'll get through it. And I'm okay with that. Whereas 20 years ago, if I couldn't play the lick, we didn't do the song until I practiced it and I could play the lick. So some of that is just age and letting go, and some of it's also I can figure it out and just let go and let it happen without overthinking it. But I don't know that I will ever pursue it in that level ever again.
No, but not at that level, but is there any other way that you can see pursuing it that's not?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, music was really about drums. And I've talked about this a little bit, a physical, real drum that resonates and makes a noise and gives some energy out of it. And now my ears are blown out. I have tendonitis, and it's kind of a hell most of the time. And so that also pulls me back a little bit from wanting to be as engaged with it. And I've gotten an electronic kit a time or two, and every time I play them, I'm just like, this sucks. This is not what I want. And it was therapy. I didn't realize until I quit playing music how therapeutic it was for me. It really was a way for me, especially when you play some metal, you just and you let all this angst out. And it took me a couple of years to process that I didn't have that outlet. And luckily my wife didn't leave me because I was kind of an asshole a lot, but yeah.
Hey, Randy.
Hello.
A question for you. So when you look back at your youth and kind of proto-management, right, of your bands, when you look back, is there anything about your approach to management looking back that you wish you would have known then or that you wish you would have implemented differently?
That's a good question. I don't know specifically. Certainly I have more in my wheelhouse now just because I'm older. I have experience. There's some things that I would have done a little differently. I don't know that I could immediately give you an idea of what that is. I can sometimes be a little too pushy, as some of my colleagues know, and that probably was a challenge sometimes. I would keep calling the phone, and then I would show up and be like, what the hell, man? You're not getting my messages? And so I might have revisited that tactic a little bit. I probably would have also thought more about the longevity of, we have no video recording of my band. We didn't put money into that. We didn't see the value in it. So there's some things like that I wish we had done, because now I look back at a few bands that did spend some money. Instead of recording in a studio, they made a video, and that video lives on, which is kind of cool, but it also helped them a little bit more than audio recording did for us. So Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
Any others? Well, if not, please join me in thanking Randy again. Finish strong, everybody.